Hello, welcome to Football Geeks. On today's show, my guest will take us on a journey outside the polarised Euro-South American-centric world of football discussion and guide us east. He championed the women's game in his 2022 book, Her Game Too, and explored the deeper importance of the football kit in Kit and Caboodle. His fourth tome, Thai Football Tales, A Beautiful Madness, navigates the reader through the colourful, surreal and often murky world of Thai football. It gives me great pleasure to welcome Matt Riley. Matt, hello.
Hey, Phil, thanks so much for having me on, and thanks for that introduction. It's great to be here.
Oh, you're very welcome, Matt. As I've read the book. It's wonderful, but as I've said to you prior to coming, I'm going to allow you to tell the story because it's a wonderful story to hear. So first off, just as a kind of intro into what happened here, we'll begin at the start. So what brought you to Thailand in the first, going to your early history, and then what brought you to Thailand?
Yeah, well, it was a circuitous route, really, Phil. We were living in the Middle East, in Kuwait, and for one reason or another, because it was a dry country, we got to know some lads in the United Nations who could get to the whiskies and the drinks, and they were telling us about a project in Thailand that the school, Harrow School UK, was going to open up, and they knew people at the school, and would we be interested in moving on to work there? So we thought we would go there. But one thing and another, in fact, the bursar at the time of the school ran off with all the money. That was the reason. But for one reason or another, the project didn't start. So we then ended up spending a couple of years, really enjoyable years in Malaysia. And as we were in Malaysia, I kept in touch with the people organising the project. And then we got to Thailand. And, 16 years later, we just about, I wouldn't say escape, but we left. We realised that if we didn't leave then, we'd never leave. So it was quite circuitous, but it felt like it was kind of meant to be. It's such a wonderful place to live.
Oh, that's fantastic. And you're telling me earlier you were actually, well, you weren't born in Malawi, but you lived there for the early part of your life, didn't you?
I did, yeah. No, that was also a very surreal experience. I mean, the word surreal probably I should count how many times I use that in the book, but it's probably quite a few. But yeah, it was a sort of dysfunctional Central African country where, as I mentioned in the first chapter, the president Banda, Hastings Banda, didn't even know when he was born. And some people still believe that wasn't him, that it was actually an actor. And, some of the things that went on were incredible, but it was a fantastic place to grow up, Phil. Wonderful weather. My dad finished work at sort of 12 o'clock, and then we go to the social club. And, it was a great upbringing, lovely people, lovely culture, but a murderous dictator at the top of the table, which is never a great thing.
And you said in the book, any country that has democratic in its title tends to it's a pre-warning, isn't it? Really,
definitely. And North Korea being a great example as well. But it was a wonderful upbringing, and then came back to the Midlands actually, Phil, as well. So I then came back to. I was born in Stafford, but we came back to live in Shropshire, and then we ended up in Devon. But it was a great experience, great place to grow up, and I think it gave me that wanderlust, Phil. That as you know, we've travelled. My wife Karen and I have travelled a lot since then, and travel is a great appetite that sort of feeds by what it grows on.
Yeah, I always say that if a country has got exotic or mildly alluring and they've got football there too, that's somewhere that I want to be. So going back into Thailand, so most stories are precursed by a tragedy, and I know you were in Thailand, and then something happened, didn't it, which got you into football? Do you want to detail that for us?
Yeah, sure, Phil. So basically, sort of backtrack a little bit. I used to play in Thailand to a reasonable standard, and used to play in the kind of what they call the Tesco Masters every year. So you're playing against the sort of John Barneses and Ian Rushes and this sort of thing. But I got to that age where it got harder and harder to keep playing. I started off as a midfielder, then a defender, and the body starts to fall apart. And these Thai lads, man, they are so fast. So I decided that I'd start going just to watch Thai football. And I decided that, there's something interesting going on here. I met a guy called Robert Procure, who was making connections between a Thai club, BC Terror, and Arsenal back in the UK. And I was really kind of interested. I was head of public relations and marketing for Harrow School Asia. And I kind of had one, as you know, in the book, I say a lot, is I got one foot in the door of the office and one foot in the stadium. And I kind of thought, do I want to jump? Because I knew it would be financially ruinous. I had a good career, good salary. The kids went to school, and that was all free. But then, unfortunately, very, very suddenly, my mum died. She had stage 3 cancer, and she'd never been ill, so we just didn't think any more of it. We just got ready to come over and go and see her and help her recovery. But before we even booked a plane, she died, unfortunately. So I started to think about, and this kind of connects to her game too, Phil. I sort of thought about the life that my mum had. She was sporty, but she wasn't allowed to pursue sport. She was arty. She wasn't allowed to pursue the artistic side of her. She was just thrown into the secretarial pool and just told to get on with it. So when my mum died, it hit me very hard. And I decided that what I love, like you, Phil, is football. And because of the connections that I'd made, I felt like there was a chance to develop the English media side of football, because I felt that's the kind of thing that if my mum had a free reign, that's the kind of stuff she'd have done. She'd have gone into the sport and that side of it. So I was very lucky that I had the support of my wife, Karen, because as I say in the book, it was ruinous financially, but just unbelievable in terms of experiences that you couldn't make up. And I often write in books, if I'm giving them to people, I promise you this is all true. So it feels like almost like a tribute to my mom, because I loved her very deeply, and it was a big shock when she died. And I decided this is what I want to do, and this is what I'm going to do. I'm not going to be on the treadmill of careers, which is very easy to stay on, Phil, isn't it?
Of course it is. Of course, me myself, I'm in education now, but for years I was doing a job that paid the salary, and when you're stuck in that rut, it's hard to get out, and you need there needs to be a considerable life change, and evidently this was the one that took you in that path. So talk us through the initial. It was Muang Thong United that you became involved with, wasn't it, initially?
Yeah, that's right, Phil. So basically, at the time, this club dominated Thai football. So I started going to the games, and I remember after about 2 years, I thought, when was the last time they lost a game? And I was with a mate of mine called Rochi. So basically, at that time, there's only 2 of us that were what they call Farangs or Westerners. Now, Chris is very, very different to me. He used to wear a Preston North End shirt. He's a very, very big unit. But they always used to interchange Matt or Rochi. So if I wasn't there, then he was Matt or he was Rochi. So we started off by going to the games, and I started to get to know some of the players. And when I had the 2 sort of, one foot in the football, one foot in my other job, I started inviting Mung Tong to our school fields and our gym to train, because the reason why the book's called A Beautiful Madness is here you've got the most powerful club in Thailand, winning the league year after year, playing in the AFC Cup and the Champions League of Asia, and they got nowhere to train. They haven't got a gym. So I decided I was going to help them out, and then I got to know the national team, and then Peter With was the coach for a while, and then obviously Brian Robson. So I kind of used both of those things, and my best friend over there was the coach of Mung Tong at the time. So it all came together, Phil. I did sort of bend my job description a little bit at work, but because I was doing marketing and public relations, I was focusing very strongly on marketing public relations with the club. So I even managed to persuade the school to buy a VIP box at the stadium and kit it out with all the school paraphernalia and get Karen to have a night out. And we actually had a night out, really nice night with Brian Robson and his assistant Steve Darby. So I leveraged my job to get to where I wanted to go, and I was lucky that at the time the most powerful club in Thailand were on my doorstep. So it was a great experience. Of course, the problem so many times is actually getting paid. That was the tricky part. But the experiences, they just came in waves, and it was wonderful.
Oh, fantastic! So it's a product of a slightly dodgy CV, then.
I would say so. A flexible CV, should we say?
Flexible, yeah, yeah, kindly worded, yeah. So. Yeah. Going into football in Thai, obviously it's something that I don't purport to know very much about, but evidently you do. So what was the match day experience in Thailand like, and did it actually change or evolve over the time that you spent there?
Hey, it was wonderful, Phil. So basically what I would do is I would go in with the team. If it's a long, obviously Thailand's a very long and large country. So if we played a northern team like Buriram United or some of these other teams, Chiang Rai, Chiang Mai, so I would be there overnight with the club, and I go in on the bus with the players. And from 6 hours before, you'd have families, generations on generations, with the picnics, with their really rough local cider with all of the sort of Thai food that they enjoyed. And so you get this wonderful generational feel. You'd have this incredibly welcoming feel. Also, in some of the provincial places, they were a little bit nervous of Westerners. You know, when I first went up north to Buriram, which now is an incredible stadium, it's exactly identical to the King Power Stadium. It got Formula One or Formula Two racing track around it. But when I first went there, sometimes they felt a little nervous because many of them didn't speak English, but they were so welcoming, Phil. It was unbelievable. And the problem I had was staying sober until the game, because they would have this like Sangsom whiskey and soda, which is kind of like a rum, and it's really very tasty. But they also had this thing called, it was another one called Mekong, and it was absolute rocket fuel. But because they maybe didn't speak English, they wanted to share the food with you, they want to share the drinks with you. And you're thinking, my goodness, I've got to remember the score. I've got to do the media. I've got to do because I would do the English commentary on top of the Thai and various other things. So the whole day, Phil, was fantastic. You'd have, perhaps very odd for us Westerners, where you'd have the away and home fans singing respect to each other, mingling together. There was, when there was a riot that I mentioned in the book, that was politically based between Mung Thong and Tai Po. That was to do with a factor of politics. But to be honest, Phil, it's overwhelming. You know, Bangkok Glass, you know, they're sponsored and they're owned by Singer Beer. So the beer is flowing, the people are friendly. And I would say to anyone who goes to Thai football, you know, okay, so the quality might be different to what you see in England, but for about £3 or £4, you're in a stadium watching a fantastic carnival of friendliness. And, you know, I get all emotional thinking about it, really, because I do miss it, to be honest, mate. And, you know, at the end, and it goes on way into the night as well, because, you know, a lot of these people, they've got very, very little income. And in the early days, the clubs would give a free bus. And as you'll remember from the book, is what I call the happy bus. So it's not only a free bus, but it's free beer, the Leo beer. And my goodness, you know, and that's what I love about Thai people, is when there's a lot of drink involved, you very rarely get trouble. You know, often they'll just be even more friendly and then fall over and fall asleep. So, you know, it was a great experience. It was a carnival. It was incredibly welcoming. You know, we had a 6'2" cross-dressing transvestite in there with us, who was totally, the only time they weren't welcome is when they were, someone was behind, they couldn't see the match because they were 6'2", which is, you know, tall for a Thai. But it was just wonderful, Phil. And as you can hear, I'm getting carried away about it already, all these years later.
Oh man! So I mean, it seems that alcohol was a very kind of a great theme throughout your time in Thailand. It was they certainly enjoy a drink. We'll go into Thai etiquette in more detail a little bit later. But this organisation, as you talked about earlier, it seemed endemic in the whole of Thai. The whole Thai football experience. So were there any head in hands moments when you thought, how did I get here?
Oh, there were plenty, Phil, I can tell you, so many. But I think the one that really stands out even now is when I was asked to do the first English commentary of a Thai Premier League game, because indicative of my whole experience, I was on a roll. So I let my guard down. So I'd met Brian Robson, the Man United team, in the hotel in Bangkok the month before. It was 4th of July. Then I'd been I'd had a first time that the club had let me video English introduction, which was called the full English. I'd been to watch Chelsea because I knew the guy, the vice president Singer. So, you know, I'm all thinking, this is it, I've done it, I've broken through. I'd seen Barcelona play like a week before. And then when I got there, I thought, okay, job done. I've been on Fox Sport, I've done all these things. And when I got to the stadium, I had a VIP box to do the commentary from. There was nothing there. Everything turned up. I had done all my notes. You know what it's like, Phil. It takes a lot of preparation, especially when a lot of times the name on the back of the shirt will be different to the team sheet. And of course, I don't read Thai, I don't read Sanskrit. So it's very, very difficult. So I did that. I really felt like it was going well. It was a fantastic game. Turned out that it was a last-minute winner against the arch rivals called Chonburi. And at half time, I sort of got my phone and realized all my friends were messaging me saying, Matt, I cannot get English. You're not on. I said, look, I am on. And as I was looking at my phone, I looked down and they hadn't plugged my microphone in. And all that work and all that preparation. And also, I think, in a way, all that almost arrogance by me, thinking, I've ticked it off. If I know Brian Robson, if I've been there, I've done that, I've been on Fox Sports, the rest is easy. there's always a custard pie around the corner when you're working in Thai football. And I have to say, again, with Thai culture, I got really annoyed at the people because I said, look, all you had to do was prepare. We could have done it a day before. We could have done it 5 hours before, but you didn't do it, and it all fell apart. And that was one of many, Phil. But in a way, it kind of adds to it. You know what I mean? It's if you want logic, you'd live in Switzerland or go to the Bundesliga. On reflection, I can laugh, but I promise you, I was not laughing that night, Phil.
I can imagine. I obviously, in doing a podcast, you do your research beforehand, take your notes, and if it doesn't quite go to plan, it is a bit of a downer. But yeah. So definitely. let's move back into like Thai etiquette. You talk about the death by yeses, which is a nuance of Thai etiquette that they're not always kind of. It's not honesty; it's more trying to facilitate the guest, isn't it? This death by yeses culture. So, what other nuances of Thai etiquette were problematic for you during your stay there?
Yeah, I think at first there were a lot, Phil. And if you think about the Thai language, and I was probably a little bit arrogant at the beginning. Now, if you speak to somebody, you would say "cap" at the end, but then you'd also say "na," and both of those are polite particles, so that everything is about making sure the person you're talking to is doesn't lose face, is not disappointed, even if you can't do something. And the very hierarchical nature of the country. And the story of us being kicked out of the Champions League because of that makes it highly problematic. But kind of the most confusing, it took me a long time to learn, Phil, it's called Greng Jai, and basically it means warm-hearted. But it's really hard to explain to a Westerner, understand to a Westerner. But for example, you and I have arranged a time to meet here at 7 p.m. as we're recording. If you didn't turn up in Thailand, I would be required to apologize to you. Okay, now I was there and you weren't, but I would say, Phil, I'm really sorry, I couldn't make that meeting. I don't know why, I just forgot about it. And it was in Thailand was always be bad traffic. That was always the thing, always bad traffic. But then we both understand each other. So then that you didn't come, and I know you didn't come, but we never speak about it, never. Okay, but at some point in the future, there is a credit that you owe me, and you will pay me back. It could be to help my children, it could be help a business deal, but as long as we never mention the fact that you let me down, we're both equal, and you will make it up. You'll make it right in the future. And that was really hard for me to understand, Phil, because it's partly face saving, and it's almost like a dance. The way I try to describe it, it's like a dance. Sorry about this, even though it's not my fault. I hate being late for things. And when I worked for Mung Tong in particular, they were always late for me. In the beginning, I just leave. I'd really fed up. You go through Bangkok traffic. But after a while, I'd realized that it's almost like a test to see how angry I get or how I'd respond to it. And, it takes an awful long time, Phil, because we're trying to apply these Western approaches, trying to look at the English and everything else. But at the same time, this is a very important part of Thai culture that the why is all about, the length of the why, where you put your hand, all of these things are very, very subtle markers of what my respect to you is. And again, I saw a lot of coaches that didn't see it. We had Slaviša Jukanovic over at Mung Tong towards the end of my time. He won every single game in the league, won the league by an absolute mile. But he was sacked because he didn't show respect to the politicians who own the club and knew nothing about football, and he did very well after that. But it's a really strange one, Phil. But it's a strange one as well, Phil, is that once you get it, it's very relaxing. It's almost like you sort of like slinking into a warm bath and you think, that's why those things happened.
Yeah. I mean, you're talking, so there is this kind of deep sense of courtesy and honor and respect, but also there's a kind of fragility to it, isn't there? So Thai people are very kindly and are very giving, but you talk about how it can go the other way sometimes, and when it does, they're a different beast entirely.
Absolutely, yeah. It's a very tricky situation to deal with, and a lot of it comes down to this idea of trust. When I first worked for my second club, Sir Banbury, wearing their shirt now, the president, his dad was prime minister. He's now in the Thai government, and in fact, I think he's minister for the environment in the Thai government. And when I was first in the changing room, was when I was first seeing the real things that were going behind the scenes. I'd have my mobile phone with me, and he was very nervous about it because he felt I was recording him. But once I got his trust, then all of the stories were there. It's almost like they forgot I was there. There was times when I was in these meetings, Phil, I was thinking, can you see I'm here? Can you? Because they like to speak English, because they're very, very high class Thais, like my boss, Kun Top. They've been educated in the West, in America or England, normally the two choices. So they like to show that they speak English. And you're listening to this stuff and you're thinking, I don't want to hear this. I shouldn't be hearing this. Don't you understand? But that was almost kind of a factor of the fact they were saying to me, we trust you. And it's actually, again, quite emotionally almost overwhelming, because the things I heard, and some I haven't put in the book because that's probably not a good idea for my future health, but you kind of overwhelmed by the fact that once they do trust you, you were in a circle that I don't think any other Westerner was in. I don't think anyone saw the things that I saw at the very, very top tables. And again, it was kind of overwhelming to think they trust me. And I didn't betray that trust. And I was very careful in the book not to. But at the same time, I could easily have done so for, clickbait or followers or whatever I was trying to pursue.
Yeah, the guy who was your boss, Kun Top, was he?
Yeah, Top, yeah.
Yeah, there's a number of a whole kind of litany of characters that you talk about during the course of the book, and throughout the journey in Thailand that you spent. Can you tell us a little bit about a few of those great characters that you experienced during your long stay in Thailand?
Yeah, I tell you what, Phil, it'd make a heck of a play if you had a list of these characters. I mean, the first one that just totally blew me away was a guy called Tan Om, and he was a referee. And I'll say the sentence, but you may not believe me, but it's all based in fact. He murdered his boss. Okay, so he wanted to be a referee at the World Cup, and he was denied the opportunity. And so, by his own admission, he put a bomb underneath the desk of his boss and killed him. So you'd think, well, okay, that's the end of that. Suddenly, he's useful to somebody else. He's a useful idiot for somebody else. He's released from prison. And he referees again. And then fast forward several years later, I'm at a wedding of the vice president of Mung Tong. Wife and I were invited. And I don't know if you've seen the picture of the cake in the book, Phil. It's about 50 feet high.
Yeah.
We're at the wedding, and suddenly there's Tanom the bomber, one of the key guests at the wedding, standing there, perfectly happy as one of the sort of key people there. And that absolutely blew my mind, because the person who tried to kill him in reply, I think he shot him 3 times, and there was 2 kind of minor injuries. He got more time in prison than Tanom the bomber, who said, yes, I murdered my boss because he wouldn't let me referee, which, again, is absolutely mind blowing. But he was a useful idiot. He's very useful. There's a lot of situations where in the game you could see what he was required to do, and I don't want to be negative about Thai football, because I absolutely loved it, but it was difficult when I knew why and what and all the things behind, and you kind of reverse engineer their decision and think, yeah, okay, that's it. So he was amazing. And also I actually really liked a guy called Nevin Chipchop. He's done some amazing things in his life. He owns part of Leicester City via his company called CP Foods. And he's a very, very powerful and also a very, very strong person. He is Thai, but from the very far north. And so he didn't do the death by yeses. And he's a very intimidating character. And I like that kind of person. My friend Rene, who's a coach, and he's still coaching now at 75. He's still coaching in Thailand. He was another of those alpha males. And I really like Neo in Chip Chop. I know all of the people that came to unfortunate endings, his business and his situations, but I love the fact that he would just say yes and it meant yes, no and it meant no. So there were so many great characters there, Phil. A lot of them politicians, and particularly the provincial politicians. It was almost like a cliche, like the chapter I wrote about the guy who fought the tiger in the cage just to try and intimidate us, and he was in construction, and His competitors were also in construction, but in a different way. But it was just incredible. And, to have this privileged situation where, we were going to a Champions League game with Mung Tong, and they didn't turn up. And I'm on the plane, on the runway, thinking, how am I going to explain this? We went to Eastern Vietnam, a place called Da Nang, and they just stopped the plane. They just stopped the whole plane, and the players just walk on. And then you realize just how powerful these people are, All the other holidaymakers thinking, what's on earth's going on here? And the players just wander on. It's just taxiing, ready to take off. So it was just amazing, kind of still processing it. In a way, I'm still processing after all these years, Phil, because, it's been sort of 6-7 years, and I still think, really? Did that really happen?
Yeah, and the disparity between the kind of hierarchy and the common tie is quite, it's expressed in that, isn't it? But there was another character you talk about in the book who was like the Mong Thong's super fan, Noi.
Noi, yeah.
Yeah.
He was amazing.
A little bit about him, because he really kind of captured my imagination when I read about him.
He was such a lovely guy, getting back to the drinking, he would drink and fall over, and they'd basically put him to sleep under the bar. He'd wake up. At one point, he just slept in the stadium. The club also owned a team, Phuket United, and he worked with them. I'm not even sure what he did as work, to be honest, Phil. It seemed to be just drinking, but he was absolutely all about the club. And to be fair, they looked after him, and they gave him the shelter, and they gave him food. And he was just such a wonderful guy. And Noi means small in Thai. And he was a tiny little guy. There's a photo of my wife. My wife's 6 foot, so obviously quite tall. But he looks like another one of our children, But he was so nice, and unfortunately, he was attacked in the riots that we were at. But you couldn't meet a nicer person, and football gave him, and people like him. Thai football gave them a sort of common purpose, something for him to feel important with. Everyone knew Noi. He'd be at the front, and he'd be cheering the fans on. Never had a bad word to say about anybody. He had kind of halting English, but he really wanted to talk. And then he just drank and drank and drank, and then he fell asleep. And everyone felt this wonderful kind of parental feeling towards him, And again, you knew it was late because Noi was asleep under the bar, and he was such a lovely guy. And he gave you that feeling of you don't need all the other trappings in life. He had football, he had a little bit of money so he could eat, he had sort of very steady supply of beer. And he was 100% happy. He never missed anything. He was at training. He was at away games, home games, academy games, everything. And I just looked at him and I thought, I like your life. Yeah. I really like your life. You are immersed in the club. And, there were quite a few faults with the club, but they were very good to him. And I still look back and think, I hope he's as happy as he was when I knew him.
Yeah, to live a life like that. I mean, the South Asian context, I think it's probably easier to adopt that. It takes for somebody like you, it takes greater courage to actually go there, if you know what I mean, because you're caught up in all these modern trappings, and there's the money and the possessions, and it's difficult to break free and sometimes be your own person, isn't it?
Absolutely. And we were kind of sort of sectioned off, we had a big house, and the school there's guards everywhere. And that's one of the reasons I managed to get Brian Robson to bring the national team down, is because he didn't want the press to come in, and it's all heavily guarded. But it does become like a golden cage. And that was the beauty of working in Thai football, because you felt like you were breaking through that golden cage, like Karen was working Monday to Friday really hard, and I would swan around. I had a club apartment that's about 100 kilometers north of Bangkok, and Mung Tong was like only a few minutes away, but it's only about 5 kilometers. But in Bangkok, that could take you 45 minutes. But I would sort of swan in on a Thursday, go to my apartment, then we go to the last training and all of the press conferences and everything else. And it was just an incredible thing. And that thing about the trappings is, didn't really need the big house. It's nice for the kids to have a good education. It's nice to do those different things. But I was just so happy, and you're in the changing room, and as a kind of failed ex-club local league player, you feel part of it. All the players getting G'd up. And the one year that Panbury got to the Champions League, you're with these really good players. There's this guy called Carmelo Gonzalez. He's played in La Liga. There's a guy called Marcelo, who was a great player, and the reason he was in Thailand because he'd slept with the president's daughter in Brazil, and he was hidden away. And he played in the Europa Cup against Newcastle United. He was a great player, And you think of all these sort of experiences, and you think, well, what are you going to take away with you? I'm going to take those memories, and I'm not going to take a big house. I'm not going to take a big car. I'm going to take those memories of going onto the pitch and getting a big bear hug from a 6'2" Brazilian central defender, and thinking they like me and they trust me, and this is amazing.
It is the camaraderie of football, and actually, the thing I love about this is just talking to football people and just enjoying the stories and the different experiences, because wherever football takes place, it's football, isn't it? And
Yeah.
it always has the same kind of unifying effect on people, and that's what makes it such an utterly fantastic and brilliant sport.
Yeah, I love when people patronize it and belittle it, and I really like that, because I think, okay, that's fine. You go off in your direction, but my local team, Exeter City, my wife and I sponsor one of the women, and we went to the awards last year, and you're just chatting to these guys. One guy's on loan from Newcastle, and he's shocked because everyone is so friendly, everyone is so kind of collegial. Even the football clubs I used to play for at a low level, there's that wonderful feeling of shared experiences, and it's great. I mean, obviously, it's not just football; all sports for me, or most sports for me. My wife plays cricket. It's that wonderful feeling of you can't let your teammates down. You can't be on the beers the night before. You've got to train. You've got to be ready. For my sins, I was captain of the team, so I had to make sure that I was there for the other players, and I had to give a little bit more than them to show that I could do that. And yeah, it's a wonderful feeling. It's a very freeing feeling, I think, Phil, to kind of leave yourself open to the love of football. Because if you close yourself off to it, well, you're missing a heck of a lot, aren't you?
Of course you are. Yeah, it's the feel good factor pervades throughout the book. But you alluded to Noy getting hurt at a game, and that was that. And we talked about the kind of duplicity of not in a kind of sneaky way or anything, but the duplicity of the Thai character, and it certainly happened in one game there. That you document quite, in quite great detail in the book.
Absolutely, Phil. I mean, the phrase I often use about people in Thailand is, beware the anger of a patient man. You can, if you don't show respect to Thais, you can push them a long way. But when they go, you've got to watch out. We did quite a lot of kickboxing and general boxing. We're very lucky to have great coaches. And the Thais will say that you've got these massive Westerners, and they call it chopping the tree down. So they don't try to go for the big roundhouse punches or anything else. They just chop the tree down. They go for the nerve endings on the knee. They show absolutely no mercy. But you show them respect, they will always be there for you. We had an evening, 2008, we had one of the boxers won a gold medal at the Olympics, a guy called Somjit John Lahore. And we went to his celebration event. And a friend of mine who was a good boxer, Australian guy, we had far too much of the local beverage. And we had Olympic boxers searching us out in bars around this little provincial area, lifting us over the shoulder. And he was 110 kilos, by the way, making sure we got home, because they knew in the gym, out of the gym, every time we always showed them respect. And, that was a wonderful thing. And that's the great character. But unfortunately, in one of the earlier games, I'd actually just taken the headmaster of Harrow School to this game. We had two clubs, one called Thai Port, they're kind of, it's a bit of a cliche, but kind of the Millwall, what is seen as the Millwall of football. They're right in the centre of Thailand. They're in a really impoverished area. Strangely enough, they're now owned by this incredibly powerful, rich woman. But against Mung Tong, who at the time were despised because they appeared to get the best referees, like Tanon the Bomber. They always used to get the best results. And we had what's called a Core Royal Cup. And the referee was clearly going towards Mung Tong, and it suddenly kicked off. Noi actually had a screwdriver in the back of his head, had all kinds of damage done. My old kids and I had to flee. We had to change because we were wearing Mung Tong shirts. We had to buy some t-shirt change on the Sky Train. People spotted us, you're running away from that. But talking about 16 years, I would say that's the only time I felt scared. And that was, in a way, understandable, because Thai Port had been given such a rough deal over so many years. In fact, they were even relegated in one game by Tanon the Bomber, which was clearly from his paymaster. So generally, it was, again, you show respect and you are kind to the Thais, and they're such lovely people. They will never ever forget that kindness. But if you don't show them respect, you have to be very, very careful and check your life insurance very carefully.
As I say, it's a tremendous book. I've thoroughly enjoyed reading it. Would
Thank
you
you,
like to tell us about the other books in the Matt Riley back catalogue?
Yeah, sure.
So
So the first one, which I'm proud of all my books, but the first one, I was really lucky that Kevin Day, the comedian, wrote the foreword to that, and also I think it's beautifully designed. It's called Kit and Caboodle: Football Shirt Stories, and what it basically is the idea that the shirts are not just the garments you wear in football; they tell you a lot about the values of your club and what you stand for. So. It's done not really nicely. All the royalties have gone to Exeter City Women. It's been really nice because we've been able to sponsor one of the players based on that. And again, Kevin Day's been absolutely brilliant. I'm really proud of that book. And again, it's the first one that I had with Pitch Publishing, who are absolutely amazing. So Kit and Caboodle Football Shirt Stories was the first one. And then I met Kaz and Lucy, who run an organization called Her Game 2. And they very kindly allowed me to tell their story. And Tracy Crouch was really supportive, really lovely person. She wrote the foreword to that. So that also helps support Exeter City Women. And tells also, I interviewed amazing experiences. You look at technology especially. I was talking to this woman called Helen, who was the first woman to coach a professional European men's team. And I was on holiday with my wife in Cornwall. And I was talking to Helen in the Faroe Islands in her office just before she was going out to training on a FaceTime call. And I just absolutely, it's just amazing. And we've had half an hour. She's a lovely, lovely woman. She'd given up a career as a policewoman to follow football. And she'd done a very similar thing to me. She stayed on as a policewoman. She gets 3 hours sleep and then she do the coaching. And she decided she was going to jump into the coaching. So I was really proud of that book. And then obviously today, great timing, Phil, Thai Football Tales has come out. And then next year in July, I've got a book which Kieran Maguire's very kindly done the foreword to, and Football 365 journalist John Nicholson, who I'm a massive fan of, has written a chapter. And that's called Kit and Community, where basically I give a chapter to a whole range of people from, I interviewed a couple I met today, actually. Their son, Adam Stansfield, died of cancer as captain of our local team. And the shirts that we always wear and take to the ground support his initiative. In fact, I've got my wrist here, is the Foundation for Bowel Cancer Awareness. So I'm really proud of that one as well. And that's going to come out next July. And people like Grassroots Football in America have done a chapter, Africa, who help children with AIDS to use football as a way of getting back into a normal life. And I'm really proud of sort of the stories that tells as well. So I've been a busy boy, proud of those 4 books. And it's a great feeling when people enjoy it, because, as well as I, it's not for the money. That is for sure.
That's absolutely true. Yeah, I've just completed my first book, which is being published by Pitch next year. So it's hard work, but as you say, it's not about the money. It's about putting stories out there for people to enjoy. That's my feeling about it. Anyway,
yeah, definitely. And this is probably the most personal one, Thai Football Tales, because the reason why I subtitled it as A Beautiful Madness is there is corruption. There are things that jar in our Western sensibility, but I'll be honest with you, I wouldn't change a thing. I don't want a cryptocurrency, NFT, white label run through Curacao to run the club. I know who they are. I know they're politicians, and there are things that I may be uncomfortable with, but there's so much fantastic experiences to be had in Thai football that it's just wonderful, and I take that over an executive box at Old Trafford any day of the week.
Yeah, Matt, thank you for treating us to your amazing recollections. It's quite a story, and it's wonderfully told in your book. And it's available now from, as we said before, but from Pitch Publishing, from all the normal avenues. You can get it, can't you? So
absolutely, yep. The Amazons and the Waterstones and the Smiths, and I would say as well, there's a company called Hive.co.uk who support independent bookshops. And if people are thinking of buying the book, it's the same price as Jeff Bezos's baby, but Hive will give a percentage to local independent bookstores, which is really lovely, and it would be nice to support them as much as we can.
Oh, that's true. So listeners, go out there and buy this book. It's fantastic.
Thank you so much, Phil.
Go and read it because you'll love it. So see
Good
you
man.
next time on Football Geeks when we'll be talking to more great guests. Till then, lag on.